Hello guys, we are live today for Carnivore Team GB live Q&A session number 24, I believe, with myself, Ben Hunt, Richard Smith, Lee Coppus, Phil Escott, and Coach Stephen. You find all of our links that we're affiliated with, our channel names, all that sort of stuff below in the little bit here, which you can see quite clearly, Carnivore Muscle, Big Fat Challenge, etc., etc. Anyway, today we're going to be doing a special talk on electrolytes. So you notice there's a different theme each week. The idea is we have different questions that pile in, all about your most interesting and thought-provoking questions related to the topic at hand. So I believe last week it was ADHD and autism or neurodivergence. This week, to celebrate the new upcoming product from Richard Smith, Keto Pro, over that way on the screen, the Welsh gentleman with the black and white backdrop. So he's basically got a new unflavored product which has been under high demand, which is carnivore appropriate, which means it's not got any extra stuff in it. And just as a preface towards this as well, what he did have beforehand didn't have really extra stuff in it anyway. It's all pretty much natural ingredients anyway. So he's taking it to the next level. So I know in a podcast, I believe, with Coach Stephen, I think it was Sunday, they're saying how it is the level 5 carnivore electrolyte product, which is excellent. And we don't have to mouth other products on the market right now, but I will say personally, I'd recommend Richard's over the others. Anyway, so if you guys do have any questions, please leave a queue before the question as mentioned in the banner at the very bottom of the screen. Otherwise, we'll just give it away to Richard just to introduce his new product. Feel free to share your screen, what the ingredients list is, anything like that, or I can bring up on my end. So yeah, just let me know.
Fantastic. Excellent introduction. Thank you very much. Yeah, the new unflavored electrolyte. Product A. So the current list of electrolytes, as you say, all the ingredients are natural. Every flavor in there is natural. A lot of companies can use the term natural ingredients whilst using a synthetic version that is bio-identical, but is not natural. But because it's bio-identical, they can claim that it is natural. And this is why many of us fear that word or that terminology, natural ingredients. But mine are natural. We are governed in regards to what we can put onto a label. But the flavored version, for example, lemon orange, contains lemon and orange. It comes from lemon and orange, and those are the flavors. They are not synthetic. The cherry berry flavor comes from a fruit called a strawberry cherry. It doesn't taste of strawberries, and it doesn't taste of cherry. So we couldn't call it strawberry or cherry because I would get lots of nasty messages saying it doesn't taste of either. So we went for strawberry cherry. Now, the reason that I'm incredibly selective in regards to the type of flavors that I use and what some would regard as being restrictive is because there are very few flavors on the market that you can use which are natural without adding synthetics. Lemon, orange are one of these, and the strawberry cherry is another. Once you start going deeper down the rabbit hole of all of these fancy pick one. You see them in electrolyte formulas all over the world. Then you're talking fake and nasty synthetic flavors. But with this, what we've done is we've taken out the stevia and the lemon and the orange or the cherry berry, and that's it. And that's all we've done with it. All the ingredients, as you can see, that are natural: potassium, sodium, magnesium, molybdenum, selenium, and astaxanthin and iodine. All natural. The ratio of these are what I believe to be closer to what is expected from a natural perspective, from an evolutionary perspective. Many other electrolyte formulas on the market they contain too high level of sodium. Sodium is super important, especially when we gravitate into a ketogenic or carnivore-based lifestyle, because insulin drops and this will signal the kidneys to release sodium from the body, leaving us devoid of this mineral, which can lead to things like keto flu. And this is the main reason that many of us throw the towel in regards to a ketogenic or carnivore lifestyle. So sodium is super important. But what many people don't realize is when we replace that sodium, we deplete potassium. And potassium in nature comes at a 4 times higher quantity. So if we look at beef, for example, beef and lamb, there is 4 times more potassium than there is sodium. The only time in nature where this ratio is off is when we look at things like eggs or milk, items that would give life or feed newborn life. And then within this ratio, there's a higher level of calcium. Beyond that, calcium is low. The calcium is incredibly low in animal protein. So to put this in perspective, a piece of beef would contain 4 times higher the level of potassium, then it drops down to sodium, and then it drops right down to magnesium and then calcium. With magnesium and calcium roughly being a 1-to-1 ratio, what we don't want to do is over-consume calcium. This is why I do not add calcium to my electrolyte formula. Excess calcium in the diet from both dietary perspective and supplement perspective can lead to an increased risk of cardiovascular disease by as much as 15%. This has been shown in study after study. This isn't to say that we should fear calcium, but once we go over 500 milligrams per day, we are at higher risk. 700 milligrams is exponentially higher risk of cardiovascular disease. And again, if we look as nature intended, it's quite low levels of calcium. But we can hit our minimum requirement incredibly easily through living a carnivore lifestyle. An egg, for example, contains around 25 milligrams. So, we're talking 4 or 5 eggs and we're hitting 100 to 125 milligrams of calcium. What we don't want to be doing is adding in supplementary calcium. So I've taken the calcium out. There's no calcium in there. Sodium, potassium, as we say, magnesium, all bioavailable. We don't add any low bioavailable products. All of these are highly bioavailable within the human body. A lot of companies will push magnesium oxide to increase that level of magnesium, but magnesium oxide carries an incredibly low bioavailability. That graphic there, actually, Steve, is Jonathan, even too many people on the screen. It said that contains vitamin C. I'm going to have to change that because it doesn't. That graphic is correct because astaxanthin is at least 65 times stronger than vitamin C, with some studies showing that it's as much as 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C as an antioxidant, but it doesn't contain vitamin C itself. It's 550 times more potent than vitamin E and 800 times stronger than coenzyme Q10. That ingredient, astaxanthin, it's the only compound on the planet that is a true antioxidant. When we look at food or animal, or let's say, plant-based compounds, where people will say that they are antioxidants, they are not antioxidants. They begin their journey as pro-oxidants. And they basically elicit what's called, apologies, I zoom in there. They elicit a response, which is a pro-oxidant response, a hormetic response. So we look at it, it's called hormesis. And it's believed that we put something that is a little bit bad into the body and it gives us a positive result. Training, for example, gives us a hormetic effect. We put a little bit of stress on the body, but this leads to a positive result. Cold water therapy, for example, red light therapy, all of these things are environmental hormesis. But when we look at hormesis from a plant perspective, this is molecular hormesis. But molecular hormesis doesn't really work because it doesn't begin its journey as an antioxidant. It starts as a pro-oxidant and it overexpresses a pathway called the NRF2 pathway, which is an oxidative stress pathway. This is the same pathway that is expressed when we consume lead, mercury, arsenic, tobacco smoke, exhaust fumes. It's the same response. And what we see from the plants that we're told carry an antioxidant benefit is this elevation of glutathione. So scientists are reading an elevation in glutathione, and we believe then that this is giving a antioxidant benefit. But glutathione is being elevated to conjugate to a toxin in order to excrete it from the body through phase 2 detoxification in the liver. Glutathione is meant to stay elevated for prolonged periods of times, which is exactly what we see with training, with cold water dipping, or environmental hormesis. But this isn't the case with these plant compounds. Glutathione is elevated and it quickly drops back down to baseline and quite often ends up lower than that baseline, which isn't a true antioxidant effect. Now, if we are to believe that this benefit is positive, then we must also benefit and resign to the fact that a compound such as lead, mercury, arsenic also confers that benefit. But we know it doesn't. We know that these are toxins to the body. Why is one beneficial to the body when the other isn't, when it expresses the same pathway through the same mechanism to the same degree? Plants are not antioxidants. They are pro-oxidants. That compound, astaxanthin, it's one of the only compounds, or the only compound that I believe on the planet, it comes from salmon, for example. It's what gives salmon the pink color. It's the only true antioxidant that does not begin its journey as a pro-oxidant. And that has earned itself the name of the king of the carotenoids. It's known as the world's most powerful antioxidant. My version is natural. It's non-synthetic. Other companies will use synthetic versions. My natural version is 21 times more potent. Now, the reason I put this formula together is because many other electrolyte manufacturers on the market they'll contain way too much sodium. They'll also contain calcium, which I've told you, is detrimental in excess. The type of magnesium they use is incorrect, and the ratio to sodium to potassium is also incorrect, because, as I said earlier, excess sodium depletes potassium, and it's arguable that potassium is required at a higher quantity to sodium, because this is how we see it in nature. So the ratio is what I believe to be as close to perfect as possible. All the ingredients are natural. There's no nasties, no artificials, and I genuinely believe this to be the #1 electrolyte formula on the market. There's other compounds in there as well, selenium and molybdenum. We can get into the crux in regards to the benefits of these, but to cut it short, they include thyroid function, the creation of DNA. We can't live without the compounds of selenium and molybdenum, which are heavily devoid within the standard diet. Selenium is expressed at high quantities within the thyroid gland and thyroid tissue, but again, to be devoid of this compound would lead to thyroid and other hormone problems. We can really get into the crux, but I think I've taken up far too much of the time. But
Richard, I've got a question about calcium. If somebody lives in an area with very soft water, so soft water is a high amount of dissolved calcium carbonate, I believe, which is chalk, limestone, whatever. Does that constitute a significant amount, and should you alter your electrolyte intake in response to that?
I would. I mean, look, calcium from different sources, it could work in different ways within the body. This is why, when we look at supplementation forms of vitamin A, for example, compared to natural forms, just to put that into perspective, some people will argue excess amounts of vitamin A will cause problems within the body. I don't believe that's an issue from animal proteins, because vitamin A from supplement form isn't true vitamin A. It's beta carotene and not retinol. And then when we look at supplementation form, things like iron and copper, these are different also. So natural forms are incredibly different to, normal supplementation forms. But calcium in excess, I think, is dangerous to the body. And yes, I would look at, means of reducing the amount of calcium that you are consuming if it's coming from a dietary source, whether that be beef, pork, or, as you say, water.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to get to the questions now, but if you guys do have any questions about Richard's electrolytes, either fire them in the chat much sooner rather than later, because we're going to struggle to get through as 6 of us on today. We've currently got about 4 questions, so if you got the questions about Richard's product, ask them now, otherwise they may not be answered. You may have to ask him directly, which he may or may not be able to help you with. I started the carnivore diet 2 days ago. I'm feeling very thirsty, drinking more than 5 litres of water a day. Is it normal? Should we start with Stephen on the bottom right this time?
You can. I was just unmuting myself. Is it normal? Yes, it's a normal thing that people do, but it isn't the thing you should be doing. That's a lot of water, really. I think once you start this way of eating, even if you've come from keto, the amount of glucose that you are eating, carbohydrate you're eating, means that you're going to lose a little bit of water retention, which is a good thing. I know Richard likes to talk about the insulin and get all technical, but basically, one glucose molecule will have 3 molecules of water attached to it. So basically, you're not retaining so much water, quite a considerable amount. So you initially feel quite thirsty, but actually, it's more about the electrolyte problem, because what you're doing is you will start to urinate, and you will urinate out all of that electrolyte that you have taken. So you need to not drink so much, and you will be less thirsty. And I know that sounds strange, but because 5 liters is way too much water, your body will try to excrete it very quickly. So there's many things about water. Water isn't compressible. So if you drink 5 liters of water, that will join your blood plasma and it will put your blood pressure up. And the kidneys will have to work very hard to excrete it, this extra water. And like I say, the electrolytes will go out. So what's the best thing to do is to try and curb the thirst. Watch your urine. If your urine is clear, you are drinking too much water. If it's dark, you're not drinking enough. It will take a couple of days to start to normalize. But yeah, just take smaller amounts of water. Don't drink so much. Don't believe the 8 glasses of water myth, which is a total myth. I know the other guys might want to jump in and get very technical about low deuterium water and all this sort of stuff and getting water from fat. But the most basic answer is drink slightly less, and then maybe have like a small glass of water with a little bit of salt in. There's a chap that sells that sort of thing that you can put in a little glass of water as well. But we're not here to sell stuff. I mean, we're talking about electrolytes. So just make sure it's the electrolyte balance that you're having problems with, and it's possibly salt that you just need a little bit of extra in your system.
Excellent. Cheers. Before we go around Phil, Lee, Richard, then Ben, if anyone's not got anything to add, just pass. We'll skip to the next question. Is there anything to mention about the 5 litres of water a day?
I mean, yeah, I mean, like, you got to imagine our ancestors, they certainly don't walk around with a bottle of water. They don't walk around with 5 litres of water. I think the answer often is drink far less water and honestly increase protein. That you're not going to get your minerals in the fats. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I ate some crisps, I ate some potatoes, all my problems went away. The reason why they went away is because you're getting the minerals that you need to get from protein. And I think a lot of people fear protein. When you consume lots of protein, yes, it's higher in minerals. It's going to be higher in taurine, obviously. It's actually much lower than it used to be. So we think we're eating, you know, accurately like our ancestors used to, but that's not true. You know, we're aging and hanging the meat for far too long. It's very sort of depleted of things like taurine. But if you're eating enough, you're going to, you know, upregulate taurine by synthesizing it out of methionine, cysteine, B6, and that's just going to help a great deal. I think that, you know, drink less water, increase protein, and most likely you'll notice some benefits there. It could take a little while because obviously if you're new to this, you're not fat adapted. You do want to produce your metabolic water that's deuterium depleted, and that comes with perhaps a bit of time. We're all different, but I'd say, you know, in simple terms, keep it simple. Decrease water, increase protein. That's what I would suggest.
On to me, I guess, then, is it? Yeah, again, 5 litres seems quite an awful lot. We look at rehydration as consuming water, but as Steve said, it's an electrolyte problem. You know, the comment just come in there now that says, what a joke, increased protein. If he's dehydrated, he's asking for trouble, kidney pain. That's a total fallacy. Protein does not cause kidney damage, complete fallacy. Again, with purines, complete fallacy. All of these are common misconceptions that we've been fed for the last 50 to 70 years. We can get into this into more detail probably in another live. And I'm sure we've covered this several times in previous lives. But 70% of animal proteins of beef is water. You know, we can get most of the water we need from animal proteins from beef that we are consuming. The amount of water that we need to consume orally from a water source specifically is incredibly low. I don't drink an awful lot of water, but when I do, I add electrolytes. Do we need electrolytes is the question. Look, I'll pass this on. I'll bounce it over to Ben, and we can tie up with this because, you know, you don't have to supplement with an electrolyte formula on Carnivore, and I'll explain why if we get more time later, because that I think is probably going to be the main message of this live. Do we need to supplement with electrolytes? In short, we need electrolytes, but do we need to supplement? Not if your diet is right. The question is your diet right, and is the activity that you're doing warranting the amount of or the amount of meat that you can consume? Is that giving you the correct ratio and volume of electrolytes required for that work? I think is going to be the question there. But Ben, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, all I'll add is that I can remember going on to strict carnivore. It was about 3 or 4 days when I was feeling very thirsty. I didn't drink anywhere near 5 liters, maybe half of that in a day, and I was having pints of water, kind of filtered water, with a teaspoon of sea salt in it. And I think part of that was just wanting, it was just oral fixation. I just wanted to keep sipping at something or putting something in my mouth. But I think, yeah, after about 4 days, the raging thirst just went. So yeah, don't worry about it. You're a newborn. The thirst will go, and you'll get over it.
Can I just add something? Just clear up protein metabolism. It doesn't happen in the kidney. It happens in the liver. And, you got mechanical digestion in your mouth. Then you've got the stomach acid breaking it down. Then you've got absorption in the small intestine. You've got a lot of metabolism of breaking down of the amino acids in the liver. Why do people talk about the kidney? Well, I'll tell you why. Because the waste product of protein metabolism, please remember that, happens through the kidney, right? So we'll get to another subject actually in a minute. I think someone's got a question about kidney and their blood tests, and yeah, it's such a myth about protein causing problems for the kidneys. I've just got too many success stories. People absolutely reversing their GFR on this way of eating. And because I've done loads of bloods over many years, I can categorically tell you that protein is not an issue. Even today, I had someone who took my advice. He met us at the War on Health, took my advice, did a cystatin C, and he's gone from being really panicked and worried because of his bloods, what the doctor's interpreting, because obviously those values relate to 60% of carbohydrate intake. He's not on that. He did a cystatin C, and he's barely got any kidney function problems at all. I mean, it's a tiny bit over range. So I emailed him today and said, look, this is the calculation. This is how it relates to the GFR. And we've lost Jonathan, I think. And it's such a myth about protein and kidneys. Such a myth. It's unbelievable.
All right. Well, I'll step in as honorary Jonathan. So we'll move on to this one because this is the one you mentioned, Stephen. So my rheumatologist says my blood tests show that my kidneys are under stress and that I'm dehydrated. I live in South Africa. We have an oral electrolyte mixture, Rehydrate. I started taking that. Anyone?
Yeah, can I jump in on this one? Because as soon as I see rheumatologist, my hackles go up. Many years ago.
Can I answer the question?
Sure.
Yeah. The last question, I didn't get to it at all. I don't know where it's gone. About 5 liters a day. Yeah, so I drink about 2 to 2.5 liters. I'm drinking closer to 2.5 at the moment because I have no or very little body fat on me, so I'm not producing as much metabolic water. I'm not hydrating through fat either because my fat intake is very low. And the other thing is my EGFR, like Coach Stephen said, actually went up on a carnivore diet. It went up by 11 points. My protein since being on a carnivore diet has been significantly higher. So, like Stephen said, your kidneys are an adaptive organ. They do act and work like a muscle. They do develop. I had a scan. My kidneys are bigger now. That doesn't mean worse off. They've adapted to my protein intake. The other thing as well is I actually had the gold standard nuclear tracer test for kidney function, and mine is way above normal. When previously I was having EGFR tests running at 54. So that's quite telling about the protein intake and the water. The other thing I say about water is, like I think someone else mentioned on the panel, if you're drinking 5 litres of water and you're not an athlete or heavily muscled, the chances are that you're drinking out of boredom. You've got one of those 10-litre bottles. You're just sipping it throughout the day, all day, every day. But like Lee said, out in the wild, you would not be doing that. You would not be walking around with a canister of water. We have not adapted over the past few hundred or thousand years to require a bottle of Evian bottled water or Buxton with us at all times, all given times of the day. It's not realistic, guys, but I just want to give my 2 cents on that. But yeah, there's a question about rheumatology, which I think I just missed, but I think Phil was speaking, so sorry about that.
No worries. Spot on there. Absolutely. Yes, it takes me back to the days around 2011, 2012, you know, crippled with psoriatic arthritis and whatever, and all sorts of issues came up. And one of them was about, I think, 2012. I was walking around with my missus around a local town. I had so many palpitations and my heart was missing like every 3rd beat. And I really thought I was going to have a heart attack. It's the only time I've seen her worried about me. And so we went to the local hospital and they said, yeah, you're in trouble. And I got blue lighted to another hospital, having sprayed something up the tongue, you know, to sort of calm down a heart attack, whatever it was, that nitroglycerine stuff or whatever. And I got to the other hospital and they said, well, it kept me in overnight. They said, it's nothing to do with heart attack. You're not having anything like it. It's probably some electrical issue, they said. That all they tested for was potassium, and that was fine. So afterwards, I took a load of magnesium. It calmed it down a bit. I still had issues for about another year until my eldest son, coming back from climbing, you know, like indoor climbing, he said, have you not figured this out? Just take a load of Celtic sea salt in some water, take these salt shots, and it'll sort it out. That magnesium had calmed it down a bit, but I took the sea salt and I've not really had a problem since after I learned about these salt shots. Now, there are certain more slightly nuanced things that, you know, Richard addressed here. But a lot of the time, if you just keep the salt intake up in water, because as my son said, it doesn't make much difference if you salt your food. It seems to make more of a difference if you take these salt shots. I once had a client who booked a consult and all he had was cramps in the night. So I said, take these salt shots. We had a great app. I felt guilty about taking his money because all I said was, you know, take these salt shots. And a couple of days later, he messaged me and he said, I'm going to pay you double because all of these issues have disappeared. And it was funny because just that simple thing can work wonders sometimes. And on the kidney function, and rheumatologists freaking out about the kidneys. I mean, you know, Stephen's covered this nonsense about protein damaging the kidneys. But it was funny because just a few days ago, I was actually stopped in the street by somebody I've never met who said, I've been watching your YouTube channel and I've taken your advice and I've lost a ton of weight. I've reversed my psoriasis and I've fixed my kidney disease. And I thought, that's so cool, isn't it? Somebody I've never met. And I don't know the science of these brilliant guys on here, but it's fairly obvious ancestrally, you know, exactly what you need to do. And you don't need to freak out about your kidney function. Had another guy who, you know, their sort of nephrologist or whatever, freaked him out because the creatinine was going up, his kidneys were going to fail, all that kind of thing. And then after a while, he realized, I just said, well, how do you feel, man? How do you feel? Something is rebalancing in there. It's okay. And just today, I had a client who I had a while ago, and he messaged me saying, oh my God, I'm really worried. All my kidney functions go out. And I followed a carnivore diet for 13 days. And I had to sort out my headaches with a load of paracetamol during that time. And now they're freaking out because they put me on a kidney transplant list and whatever. And I said, well, listen, just Google paracetamol and kidney damage. and then see if that it might be the paracetamol or our ancestral diet that's causing you this kidney issue. Because his girlfriend and his family and everybody are hassling him, saying you've got to come off this diet. The nephrologist said you need to go on a vegan diet and all of this. There's so much panic out there about kidneys, meat, whatever. Just eat meat, salt if you want. If you have some kind of electrolyte issue like cramps or palpitations, take some salt in some water, a little more salt than usual. If there's still an issue, go talk to somebody like Richard and figure out what other electrolytes might be at balance. But it's fairly simple, you know. I'm just really simple on all of this stuff. Eat your ancestral diet, drink no more water than you need, because I've done that, and loads of distilled water on a vegan diet, and strip myself of all kinds of minerals, including zinc, which lost my sense of taste, and really sort of lost my confidence in distilled water for probably a decade, where I was kind of on the wrong track about that, really. But we could come into that. But, you know, just put it through the ancestral lens, do what you need to do, and don't listen to anybody that says you need to drink 5 liters of water a day. And according to some bizarre rat studies, protein damages the kidneys, because it's absolute bollocks. Right, that's my rant.
Lee, you've been demanded to make big on screen, so I've done exactly what I've been told to do.
I was quite comfortable.
Nice and big.
To add to that, I just wanted to say, if I wasn't clear about what I was talking about before with taurine, the reason why I brought that up is, yes, electrolytes are important. Yes, we do need electrolytes. We've got a certain amount in the cells, a certain amount in our blood at any time, but taurine is going to regulate those things, and that's why taurine is so important. It's a master regulator. It helps upregulate antidiuretic hormones, which also control your fluids. So if I wasn't clear on the taurine thing, that's the whole reason I brought taurine up, because when you're eating quite a bit of meat, lots of protein, you're going to make and synthesize taurine. That's going to kind of regulate whether things are a little bit above or a little bit low. They manage that. Taurine's going to control that. So just to set that clear, just in case it wasn't succinct. But yeah.
Anyone else got any answer for this question at all? Because I'm stumped. No. We'll move on to the next one. We'll move on to the next one from Matthew. So, have any of you experimented without salt on a carnivore diet for a period of time? If so, did you notice any positive or negative changes? I'll quickly say myself, no, and I wouldn't try to, because there's not a problem with what I'm currently doing. And if there was after 4.5 years, I might have just wiped off what I've been doing for the last 4.5 years personally. That kind of experiment, I don't see a rationale for myself, although I would be curious to see if someone else did it, just out of curiosity. But I mean, Ben, do you have a take on this sort of thing at all without salt?
I mean, I know Anthony Chafee barely ever salts his meat now. I just go with one of the golden rules, which is that your body knows. If you start to feel like if adding salt feels like a good idea, then your body's probably wanting electrolytes, so add the salt. If you don't want salt or something tastes too salty, stop adding so much salt. It's really that simple. Your body is extremely good at this. It's far better than your brain at figuring out what it needs.
I'll second that. I think, you know, when you see the people who don't salt their meat, and ancestrally we probably wouldn't have done, their bodies are in absolute balance and the meat gives them everything they need. If you need a little bit of salt in the meantime, or put some in the water, it's just a reflection of the imbalances that we've come into the carnivore diet with. And so, you know, look at Anthony, he's pretty healthy. He's, you know, he's in balance and he doesn't need it. If you need it, fine. But I think our bodies excrete any sodium that we don't need. So it's not going to kill you putting a bit too much salt in meat if you need it, if you've got the taste for it. So don't worry about it. It's not like, you know, we need a hell of a lot more chips or pizza or whatever. It's just salt is fine. Don't worry about it.
Me to jump in there quickly.
Yeah, sure.
I've experimented without salt, because meat contains all the electrolytes that we need. You know, there's a common misconception that we need vegetables for electrolytes. There are more electrolytes in beef than there are in your green veg. Potassium, for example, is considerably higher. I think it's something like 360 milligrams per 100 grams compared to like 340 with kale. And that's base per 100 grams, but we don't eat food per 100 grams. In the wild, we wouldn't catch an animal and chop up 100 grams of a chicken breast or a piece of steak or a piece of muscle. You know, a chicken breast, for example, if you're eating chicken, is around 130 grams. We don't eat it in 100 grams. We don't eat 100 grams of beef. No, it's 500 grams or probably closer to a kilogram in my case. But even on a gram for gram basis, there's more potassium in red meat than there is in kale. It's a similar issue with magnesium. Magnesium is slightly less than kale. But, you know, we're talking fractional amounts, 5 to 10 milligrams per 100 grams. But again, 100 grams of kale is an awful lot of kale. We wouldn't just eat 100 grams of beef. We'd eat as nature intended. We'd spend days tracking, hunting, catching, and killing an animal. We'd eat that animal, and we'd eat everything within that animal. The animal proteins contain all of the electrolytes that we need. Now, the question is, in regards to Anthony doesn't do an awful lot of training anymore. He's not, a professional sports person. His requirement for electrolytes is going to be a lot less than the likes of Dr. Sean Baker, for example, who is a known user of supplemented electrolytes because he does a lot of athletic activities, particularly rowing, deadlifting, so on and so forth. So his requirement for electrolytes is going to be considerably higher than someone else who doesn't train. Do we need to supplement with electrolytes? I think if your diet is 100% spot on and you are not doing any long distance training or any intense workouts, then I believe that you can get away with eating and consuming and finding everything that you need from animal proteins. But the question is, do we do this? And the reason I say this is if we look back to Stone Age time, we would have consumed around 15,000 milligrams of potassium per day. 15,000 milligrams. That is an incredibly high amount of potassium. We don't consume anywhere near that anymore. The amount we consume is considerably lower. The soil has been eroded. The vegetation that the cattle are eating are not as nutrient dense. We would have caught and killed an animal. We would have eaten everything within that animal, and we would have eaten that animal from nose to tail. We don't eat nose to tail anymore. We don't eat organ meats. At least many of us don't. We don't eat the connective tissue on the bone. The connective tissue contains the glycine, which helps moderate the methionine to glycine ratio. The glycine is a component of collagen and also contains all the electrolytes. We would have killed that animal. We would have cut the meat up. We would have crushed the bones. We're not eating the marrow of bones anymore. We're not eating the connective tissue. We're not eating the bone fragments. We're not consuming the cartilage on the bone. When I eat chicken, I eat the cartilage on the end of the bone. These are the pieces that people leave and don't consume. I eat all of that connective tissue and all the bone that I eat. So I can achieve or consume all of the electrolytes that I need from dietary perspective. But we don't do this anymore. We don't cut the meat up. We don't throw it onto the ground. We're not absorbing the minerals from the ground that we would have when we were storing the meat on rocks after chopping it up. And that's what it comes down to. If we are consuming a lion-based diet, for example, and not eating nose to tail, then we could be devoid in electrolytes. But that's not to say that we can't consume them and achieve that ratio correctly from diet alone. But we certainly do not need plants. As I say, red meat, animal proteins are a much better source of potassium and sodium, magnesium, so on and so forth. But the fact is, many of us do not consume the correct amount and ratio of foods. We don't eat that connective tissue. How many of you guys eat the cartilage off the end of a chicken bone? If you eat chickens, that is, yeah.
Richard, we had a chicken carcass, right? The kids, I don't eat it, but the kids finished it off, and I always leave it in the fridge. And then the missus came home and said, "Is there any food?" And I said, "No." Oh, hang on, no, there is, because she grew up in Tanzania. She eats everything. Now that thing, she starts on that when everybody else finishes. The bones, the cartilage, everything. It just goes.
Yeah.
And so that was her meal this evening. You know, what everybody else would have put in the bin without knowing. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic source of nutrients. And it's a big one for us. I mean, within the carnivore community, the methionine to glycine ratio is a big concern for many people, especially that's an argument that the vegan, vegetarian community will throw up. Excess methionine can cause many issues and health problems. Apparently, it reduces the telomeres and so on and so forth. But glycine, glycine from our food can prevent this. And the reason being is that methionine gets buffered. Glycine buffers methionine, therefore reducing the amount of glycine within the body. Glycine is a component of collagen. Collagen makes up every ligament and joint within the body. And to be low in glycine could lead to joint issues, tendon issues, muscle issues, so on and so forth. So consuming those pieces of that chicken, consuming that connective tissue on the bone is really important. That's how I eat. And coming back to the original question, you know, I've taken out electrolytes because I eat nose to tail. I eat organ meats. I eat all of the connective tissue. I managed, but I train a lot. You know, I do extensive workouts and exercise routines. My requirement for electrolytes may be considerably higher than the average person. So supplementing with electrolytes for me works incredibly well. And I have tried without, but for my life, for the workout routines that I do, I need more than I can obtain from diet. I'm already consuming over 1 kilogram of beef or lamb per day. You know, that's an awful lot. I don't think I could consume 1.5. Although I did recently, I did a 1.5 kilogram challenge of beef. I don't know if you guys saw it on Instagram. 6 grass-fed beef patties. I thought it was 12. It was 12 patties. They were doubled up, so it looked like 6. I thought it was going to be a walk in the park. I wanted to do 2 kilograms. I'm glad that I didn't, because I think I would have been sick, but I just about managed it. But this was early in the morning. I'm not a morning eater. I don't usually eat until later in the evening. I think if it was later in the evening, I probably could have managed the 2K. But 1.5K of beef or meat is an awful lot. And if I'm not consuming or achieving the correct volume of electrolytes from consuming that amount of food, then this is where supplementation comes in. But we can, if you are not training as extensive as Jonathan is, for example, in the gym, if you're not depleting to that extent, you know, intensity and that extent, if you're not doing world record rowing like Sean Baker, then you can live a perfectly healthy lifestyle and obtain all of these vitamins and minerals from your animal proteins. No veg required. But many of us within the community, we do train because we feel that production of ketones in the body gives us this extra energy, and we feel the need to go out and do more work. At least I think, you know, I think that's the reason that I do it. But it's running, cycling, powerlifting, all of these things use up extensive amount of electrolytes. Electrolytes are essential for life. They're essential for the production of ATP and lots of chemical reactions within the body. We can't live without electrolytes. But the fact is we can receive and achieve most of these through diet alone. If you're lacking, supplementation is fine, but always predominate your animal proteins, because this is where the bulk, if not all of your vitamins and minerals are going to come from.
Richard, what do you think about, you know, people who, as we do, add a load of bone broth to things to sort of, you know, moisten it up and as a sauce and whatever? We've always got some on the go. How much do you think that contributes towards taking in the essential elements from connective tissue and electrolytes and whatever? Is that a good thing for people to do?
Yeah, fantastic sauce. If you can make bone broth, fantastic. Chicken bones takes roughly 24 hours. Beef and lamb bones is around 48. So it is time extensive. You can get bone broth. You know, Stephen and I both recommend the British Bone Broth Company for that. You just add water, fantastic source of electrolytes. And again, you know, all of the glycine and all the other contributing compounds. They're brilliant, fantastic. I will add these to meat sometimes if I want to flavor my food, but it's also important to recognize that the compounds contained within compete for absorption with other proteins. So when we consume muscle protein, the muscle proteins are going to compete for absorption with type 1 and type 3 collagen. Type 1 and type 3 can be consumed together because they don't compete at least as much. But when we consume these with a meal, they do compete for absorption, so less of these are absorbed. So in an ideal scenario, we'd consume our food and we consume the bone broth either before or after, probably around about 2 hours, ideally before bed. But adding them to your meal is still a fantastic thing to do. It's just not going to allow the body to absorb all of those nutrients to the max capacity. But there's certainly nothing wrong with doing it. But I would quite often consume bone broth before bed. It's incredibly strange the first time you drink bone broth because it's like drinking gravy, like watered down gravy. It doesn't seem like it's right. And a lot of people would be disgusted by it. But as you continue to do so night after night, you realize that you begin to crave it. And that's your body telling you that it needs the salts. And coming back to what Ben said earlier, salt in your meals. Listen to your body. Some days I like to salt my meals with tumps and tumps of salt. Other days I feel like I don't need to. And that's because the other days my body doesn't need the salt. Your body is incredibly intuitive. And quite often when we are craving sugar, it's not sugar that we're craving, it's the salt. So salt, you know, make no doubt about this. Salt is incredibly important. Yeah. How you consume that is up to you. But all of those are fantastic choices.
Yeah, nice one. We'll get to the next question now.
And so there we go. Always have this in the fridge.
Is that with the fat on top?
That's the fat on the top.
Oh, that's good.
Really gelatinous. It's not pouring anywhere. Excellent batch of bone broth.
Savory jelly.
Yeah.
Does anyone here drink the sediment? I've always discarded the sediment.
I melt it down and eat and just drink it if I have it. That's what I do. What I'll do is I find a way to like slow cook meat in it, so the fat is a bit more juicy. Sometimes I'll almost steam it in the fat, then pour some of the fat back over it. I do weird stuff, but there's lots of ways you can prepare it. We'll get to the next question now because we're miles behind, absolutely miles behind. The question is just quickly for Richard: what is the sea salt in the new Electrolyte?
The sea salt is Celtic sea salt. We changed it from pink Himalayan recently, so the ingredients have been changed. Really quickly, I will be super quick with this. I've launched these on Amazon recently, and Amazon don't allow you to combat negative reviews. You can't go back on as a manufacturer and say when somebody says something. There's in the top of the container, there's a little pinhole. Well, this one isn't because it's been opened because I've been using it, but there's a little pinhole in the seal and people think that the container's damaged. That pinhole is there on purpose. It's there on purpose. The container is not damaged. That seal is there and every seal has it. It needs to be there. When it's compressed, it needs to allow excess air to escape. And also what you may have noticed there is that these are an orange-red color, yet they're unflavored. This isn't because we've added something that shouldn't be there. That's the color of astaxanthin. It's perfectly natural. I had a barrage of abuse and negative reviews on Amazon saying that there was a pinhole in the seal, the product was damaged, and it's full of nasty chemicals, and it's orange in color. It's meant to be. Read the description. I've got a little postcard in there highlighting the fact that there's a pinhole in there, and the description mentions about the astaxanthin. People are just so stupid. They don't read the descriptions, and it's really, really, really depressing and extremely it's distressing when people leave negative reviews after not reading the description.
Richard, didn't you hear? Electrolytes aren't meant to taste like salt. They're meant to taste plain.
And that's the other thing. It tastes too salty. They're electrolytes. What do you expect them to taste?
You have to expect them to taste a bit. So if they're not tasting salty, guys, you're buying something else.
Yeah.
They have to have some level of powderiness to them. I mean, Richard's Keto Pro pre-workout product that I use for my gym sessions, that's got a very subtle, I wouldn't say chalky, not like overpowering chalky, but subtle taurine-y kind of amino acid taste. Not chemically, but kind of powdery. I expect that because it's got a lot of taurine in it. It also got a lot of citrulline in it, and a lot of other ingredients, MCT powder, which gives it that subtle texture. But you can't make something without these things in it, which gives a certain profile. But the thing is, if you're trying to optimize your health, your performance, that's what you need to do. So years ago, they used to come up with bodybuilding pre-workout products, ultra concentrated 3 gram scoop. You think, oh, it's got all this in one scoop. It's not got that. It's not got creatine. It's not got beta-alanine. It's not got citrulline. It's not got taurine. It's not got tyrosine. Not got N-acetyl. I don't know, carnitine. It's not got any of these extra things in it because there's not a concentrated product. You're just buying stimulants. So when you buy one of Richard's products, you know it's got what it says in the label at the right clinically proven dose. So I just want to get that one in quick. We got a question here related to sports performance, which is DOMS. I'll leave everyone else's comments on this one. So delayed onset muscle soreness. So the soreness you typically get after the gym around 24 to 36 hours after a gym session or a run. Does anyone have an experience where they've used electrolytes and noticed it diminish a little bit or increase or anything like that? Just go around the in clockwise maybe.
No, pass.
Yeah, I mean, DOMS is quite often a problem with hydrogen ions, which we do negate when we are long-term keto carnivore. The body has the ability to ship lactate to the liver and convert it into glycogen and send it back to the muscle at a higher rate than even a carbohydrate athlete. So as you adapt, the DOMS will go away, the pump will feel less explosive. A pump shows an inefficiency within the muscle, but in short, I won't take up too much of the time. Electrolytes can help because they can help pull that fluid back into the muscle as you're going through that process of adaptation and building up your body's ability to do so.
What about you, Lee? Have you had any experience with electrolytes and DOMS?
No,
or have you noticed anything particularly increases it, maybe?
I've never done real intense sort of physical workouts on Carnivore. I don't know. I mean, I do kind of short bursts. I don't go crazy. I never really wake up and feel sore doing anything apart from those one-legged squats the other day. I had really sore glutes, but yeah, I don't. It lasts a day, and then it's gone, and I just carry on doing what I'm doing, and it's gone. So I haven't got any sort of before and afters to really share any kind of real experience with that. But yeah, I'm sure it would probably help anyway, just to make sure you're hydrated.
Excellent. We'll move to the next question. Just so everyone's aware what Rich was on about earlier. We also had it up on the screen early at the very start. We did a screen share so you can find his products there, which is theketopro.com/collections/electrolytes for flavored and unflavored electrolyte products, which are excellent. Next question is very relevant, actually. So, can you drink too much electrolytes, and is there a maximum per day? I'd like to fire this one at Stephen, actually, because he's not answered much for a little bit.
Well, yes, you can have too much of anything. Sorry, you're now going to get the real anal sort of grammar Nazi that I am. The word's too much. You can have too much water. You can have too much anything. You can have too much electrolytes. So, yes. Is there a maximum? Your body will tell you, for instance, with salt, if something's too salty. I know, Rich, we're talking about your unflavored electrolytes. People aren't used to that. They will adapt, actually. They'll get to enjoy that, I think. There's no maximum as such because we're all different humans. Phil is different to me. He's got different activity. Lee's different to me. He works hard. I don't. So it's all those sort of things. But I don't think you should be drinking tons and tons of electrolytes. You should be doing it really for a purpose, and try it actually to be drinking none. And even Richard, whose living depends on this, will say, and you've heard him. If you can get everything from food, get it from food. So it isn't a case of how the high carb sort of community or the vegan community gets on with selling you all these sort of shakes and potions and bits and bobs. It's not like that. So don't be thinking like that. Sorry to be a bit like a schoolmaster, but just keep it to a minimum. And with a view to not using them at all, actually, and adapting to getting all your electrolytes, all your minerals, all your water from the food that you eat.
It's a great shout. Phil, do you have a take on that question at all?
Not really. I mean, it depends on how much electrolytes. If you're drinking a pint of, diluted 50% Lugols or something, then you might have a problem. So, just listen to your body. If it needs more salt, it does, and if it doesn't, then you won't need so much. And it's Richard and other people have said, it varies day to day. So, is there a maximum per day? God, just don't take spoonfuls of it and overdo it. I don't know. Just listen to your body. I'm simple on that. I always say the same thing. You won't kill yourself with it, though. Well, unless you take pure potassium all day long or something like that, but you'll be fine.
Lee, do you have a take on this question at all?
I mean, like Richard said, if you're doing the diet properly, you will have sufficient electrolytes. Add salt to make up for the excess of potassium and things like that. So it's all like roughly balanced. Again, you're going to be upregulating all these things perfectly with taurine, getting that proper balance. You probably can have too much. I'd just say if you've got an electrolyte supplement, take the daily amount and eat properly, and you won't go wrong. You're going to give your body everything it needs to control what you need. Your kidneys will dump any excess, so it's not really a problem.
I'll just quickly say there is a maximum each day, like the guy said. What that is, you don't know. You could very easily overdose of potassium. You could give yourself a heart attack, absolutely, without a doubt. I've had my blood potassium levels tested at around 8 before. I function like a normal person with very high potassium levels. Now someone else, maybe not. Maybe they're not as lucky. Maybe their kidneys aren't as powerful as mine. I don't know. Then other people, they'll have low potassium. It also comes down to like the insulin factor as well. What I notice of myself, when my food intake is low, my fasting insulin is lower. Therefore, I'm not storing as much electrolyte. So now it becomes a bit more critical that I'm a bit more careful of how much salt I'm having. So whereas in the off-season bulking up bodybuilding phase, I'd have lots of food, my insulin level was probably a bit higher. I didn't have to worry too much. My body was just doing what it had to do. I was eating more food. Things were being flushed around nicely. Now it's like, okay, if I don't have a pinch of salt before the gym or half a teaspoon, or have one of Richard's electrolyte powders before the gym, I do notice about halfway through I feel a bit flaky, a bit like my body's not quite churning out the energy. Like I'm not getting that strong contraction in the gym. So in certain instances, these things are very useful. But maybe you don't need a whole sachet. Maybe you need half a sachet. Maybe you're a 135-pound lady that is just doing a bit of yoga in the garden. You don't need all these extra things. It's all scalable. It's where I might use a sachet or maybe 2 sachets sometimes. You might use half. Just because a serving size says an amount doesn't mean you have to use that. So that's why, Rich is a good product, because it's portable. You can fold it over if you don't want to use it. You can use a third, use a whole one, use 1.5. You work out based on how you feel on your dose that way. So I quite like that approach myself. Do you, Ben or Richard, have any sort of takes on maximums?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the guys have hit the nail on the head. Do this intuitively. Salt to taste, and it's as simple as that. I tend to add electrolytes to most of the water that I drink. How much I add depends on what my body tells me. Sometimes it's a quarter of a scoop, sometimes it's a full scoop, other times it's a half. I very rarely drink water without it, but what I would add to that is that, the fear of consuming too much electrolytes from like a sodium perspective. I mean, we're told to consume no more than 1,500 milligrams of sodium per day. But the joint association of urinary sodium and potassium excretion with cardiovascular events and mortality. This study covered 100,000 participants over 17 countries, and they measured sodium excretion So we can assume what sodium that was excreted is at least what we consumed. And it showed that the volume that was excreted between 4,000 to 6,000 milligrams was optimal, whereas the lower down the scale that we went, the higher the risk of all-cause mortality. Below 2,000 milligrams, massively increased risk of death, basically leading to the fact that sodium is incredibly important. We need it for life. You are far more likely to be consuming not enough sodium than you are to be consuming too much. And if you consume too much sodium, you will quite easily feel sick. You know, and again, salt into taste is a perfect way. If you don't want salt on your food or you don't want salt in your water, then you do not need it. So do this to taste. But again, this study was based on excretion. So we can estimate that within the carnivore community, you know, I consume closer to 10,000 milligrams of sodium per day. That's 8 times higher than that we're told to consume. My body needs it. So we're all different. Adjust to taste. If you don't want it, don't add it, you know, and if you feel like you need salt, put it in. Listen to your body. And I think that's the best thing that we can do. And always preference animal proteins and real food first. Supplementation comes second.
I like that. Ben, do you have a quick take?
No, we could carry on for another 3 hours at this rate, because I think we've got more questions than half an hour ago. So, but unfortunately, we're
absolutely. Yeah, guys. So it's a shame because we did get about 16 more questions we haven't yet answered. So this just emphasised the fact to you guys, if you want to get your questions answered, get in here quick. 7 p.m. UK start time. I think it might be 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I might be wrong. I don't know, but I know it's definitely 7 p.m. UK time. 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sorry. There we go. That's it. What was my balloons? What are they doing? What, does that work for me? No, I don't know. Some sort of magic. Anyway, guys, so thank you very much for getting your questions in. We might have to do a part 2 of the electrolyte thing, maybe in a few weeks, so save your questions for then. Otherwise, please feel free to ask them on Coach Stephen's and Richard's podcast, live Q&A, which is on Sundays. Every Sunday night, I believe it's 6 p.m. start time. 7 p.m. Start time UK. So ask your questions at that time. It'd be a great place to get them answered. Otherwise, I'm going to put on everyone's names on the screen now so you can follow all of us. So I'm on YouTube, Carnivore Muscle. Both Ben Hunt and Phil Escott in the middle here represent the bigfatchallenge.com. We've got that way. We've got Richard Smith over this way somewhere. Keto Pro. He's the founder of Keto Pro, so check out those electrolyte products as well. We've got Coach Stephen, who has to run off very shortly, and he is from the UK carnivore.com. And other than that, we've got Lee Coppus, and his channel is Kent Carnivore. So subscribe to all of us. Between us, we're quite mighty. We've got probably 100,000 following between us all, which is, I think, absolutely amazing. We're representing the UK very nicely per capita. We've got a really good subscribership and great viewership. Tonight, I think we peaked out at 165 viewers, which I greatly appreciate. And if you want to get questions answered even sooner next time, leave a super chat to any of our channels, and we will answer it regardless of whose it goes to, even if it goes to me, funny enough. But yeah, share your chats around. We'll probably get together at some point and spend it all. But no, take care, guys, and thank you very much for joining.